March 2026 is about to become one of the most violent and unpredictable months we've seen in years, as meteorologists are tracking what could be the explosive beginning of the most dangerous tornado season in recent memory. Right now, the Storm Prediction Center has issued multiple severe weather outlooks highlighting a highly active early March pattern that's setting up across the central United States, with multiple rounds of severe weather expected from North Texas through Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, and into Missouri over the coming days. Wednesday, March 4th, and Friday, March 6th are standing out as key days to watch, with Friday currently showing the strongest potential for organized severe storms, including what forecasters are calling an isolated but significant tornado threat. This is not just another spring storm system. This represents a fundamental shift in our weather pattern that could unleash the most chaotic and devastating stretch of severe weather we've experienced so far this year, and it's all happening right as the 2026 tornado season officially kicks into high gear. Today, I'm going to break down exactly why March is about to explode with meteorological mayhem, how a dramatic northward bulge in the jet stream is creating the perfect setup for multiple tornado outbreaks, and why this week could mark the beginning of what AccuWeather is calling a transition year that will completely change how severe weather unfolds across the United States. The immediate focus is a dual threat scenario that meteorologists have been warning about for days. A brief return to winter conditions in the north and east, followed immediately by a violent surge of severe weather across the nation's midsection that has the potential to produce some of the most dangerous storms we've seen in years. What makes this situation particularly alarming is that we're dealing with a complex atmospheric tug-of-war that's unfolding across the entire United States. Residents from the Great Plains to the Atlantic coast are facing a chaotic mix of weather hazards, ranging from slippery wintry mixes and dangerous ice jams to explosive severe thunderstorms and what AccuWeather is describing as the looming specter of an exceptionally busy tornado season. The transition from winter to spring is rarely a quiet affair, but 2026 is proving to be absolutely no exception to that rule. The Storm Prediction Center has already issued a 15% slight risk for severe storms on Wednesday, March 4th, and forecast guidance is indicating that this is just the beginning of what could be multiple storm chances as an increasingly active pattern sets up across the central United States. Model projections are highlighting a consistent storm track stretching from North Texas through Oklahoma and eastern Kansas into Missouri, with the most frequent severe weather chances appearing to be centered from northern Missouri southward into North Texas, where repeated disturbances are forecast to move along the same corridor. This setup supports multiple rounds of thunderstorms rather than a single isolated event, which is exactly the type of pattern that can produce widespread destruction across multiple states over several days. While Wednesday brings an initial severe weather risk that forecasters are taking seriously, Friday, March 6th is standing out as the day with significantly greater upper-level support and improved low-level wind dynamics that could create conditions favorable for what meteorologists are calling supercells capable of producing tornadoes, very large hail exceeding 2 inches in diameter, and severe wind gusts. The geography of this threat is particularly concerning because it encompasses some of the most densely populated areas of the Southern Plains, including major metropolitan areas like Dallas-Fort Worth, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Kansas City, and Wichita Falls. Cities across this region fall within what the Storm Prediction Center has highlighted as the zone of greatest concern, and this marks the beginning of what AccuWeather is describing as a multi-day severe weather setup that could persist well into next week. What's driving this explosive pattern is a dramatic northward bulge in the jet stream that's set to usher in a surge of spring-like warmth by mid to late week. Cities like Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia could see temperatures soar 10 to 20 degrees above historical averages for early March, but it's the collision between this warm air mass and colder Canadian air pressing south that's creating the volatile boundary that serves as the engine behind this multi-day severe weather outbreak. As the warm air surges northward, it's bringing with it moisture levels that are significant for this time of year, with dew points reaching into the 60s across parts of the plains plains, combined with strong upper-level energy and multiple surface low-pressure systems tracking across the region, the environment appears highly supportive of organized severe convection that could produce all types of severe weather hazards, including destructive tornadoes. The repeated nature of these disturbances increases the chance for what meteorologists call training storms, where multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms move over the same areas, dramatically increasing the potential for flash flooding, widespread wind damage, and multiple tornado occurrences in the same regions. This is exactly the type of setup that can turn a moderate severe weather event into a historic and devastating outbreak that gets remembered for decades. AccuWeather's severe weather experts are particularly concerned about the timing of these storms, noting that in each round, the severe weather threat may continue well into the nighttime hours. Nocturnal tornadoes are statistically much more dangerous than daytime tornadoes because they are difficult to see and can catch residents while they are asleep and unaware of the approaching danger. This significantly increases the potential for fatalities and injuries, especially in areas where people may not have adequate shelter or warning systems. The current outbreak is serving as a precursor to what AccuWeather long-range forecasters expect to be a transition year for severe weather patterns. As the 2026 tornado season ramps up, the departure of La Niña conditions is playing a pivotal role in the atmospheric setup. AccuWeather is predicting a tornado count ranging between 1,050 and 1,250 for the year, which is near the historical average of 1,025 and significantly lower than the 1,544 preliminary report seen in 2025. However, this doesn't mean the season will be less dangerous, quite the opposite. While tornado numbers may be closer to average, conditions are setting up to favor repeated rounds of powerful thunderstorms capable of producing what meteorologists call significant tornadoes, along with very large hail and widespread damaging winds. The atmosphere is becoming increasingly supportive of what forecasters call mesoscale convective systems, which are large organized complexes of thunderstorms that can produce widespread destruction over multiple states. The geography of risk is also shifting in important ways as the season progresses. In March, the focus remains on the corridor from Oklahoma to northern Georgia and north into Illinois, which is exactly where we're seeing this week's severe weather threat develop. By April, forecasters expect the bullseye to move toward the Mississippi River Valley, and by May, the traditional tornado alley from central Texas to eastern Nebraska will likely see the highest frequency of activity. One limiting factor for early season northern expansion is the Great Lakes region. AccuWeather has pointed out that as of early February, ice coverage on the lakes reached 58%, which is the highest level since 2019. This massive reservoir of cold water is acting as what meteorologists call a natural air conditioning system, preventing severe weather from pushing into the northern plains and upper Midwest until late April or May, when the lakes finally warm up. What makes this week's threat particularly significant is that we're dealing with what the Storm Prediction Center calls a favorable dry line setup across the southern plains. A dry line is a boundary that separates hot, dry air from warm, moist air, and it serves as a focusing mechanism for severe thunderstorm development. When upper-level disturbances move over these boundaries, they can trigger explosive thunderstorm development that produces supercells capable of generating large tornadoes. Forecast soundings near the instability axis in the late afternoon north of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex northeastward to Fort Smith, Arkansas, are showing ML Cape values in the 1,500 to 2,000 joules per kilogram range with 0 to 6 kilometer wind shear up to 40 knots. The 700 to 500 millibar lapse rates are forecast to be near 8 degrees Celsius per kilometer, which creates an environment that will strongly support supercell development and very large hail, especially early in the event when storms are more likely to remain as discrete individual cells. During the early to mid-evening hours, forecasters expect these storms to organize into what's called a quasi-linear convective system or squall line. This transition often results in an increased wind damage potential, as the linear structure allows storms to accelerate and produce widespread damaging winds across large areas. A marginal tornado threat will also be possible with any supercells that can maintain their individual structure, as well as with rotating cells that can develop within the linear system. Beyond this week's immediate threats, longer-range forecast models are showing signals for continued active weather patterns throughout the month of March and into early April. The Climate Prediction Center is forecasting above-average precipitation across most of the Great Plains and East Coast for the next several weeks, which indicates that this active severe weather pattern is likely to persist rather than being just a one-time event. Temperature outlooks are showing well above average temperatures expected for nearly the entire country, which means we're looking at a rapid transition into spring-like and eventually summer-like conditions. This temperature regime, combined with increasing moisture transport from the Gulf of Mexico, creates the perfect recipe for an active and potentially historic severe weather season. The broader implications of this pattern shift extend far beyond just this week's severe weather threat. We're looking at what could be a fundamental reorganization of North American weather patterns that favors more frequent and potentially more intense severe weather outbreaks throughout the spring and early summer months. This has significant implications for agriculture, transportation, energy infrastructure, and public safety across much of the central and eastern United States. For residents across the threat area, this means now is the time to finalize severe weather preparedness plans. This includes identifying safe rooms or interior spaces away from windows, ensuring multiple ways to receive weather warnings, including battery-powered weather radios and smartphone apps that can wake you up during the night, and keeping emergency supply kits stocked with water, non-perishable food, flashlights, and first aid supplies. The repeated nature of this week's severe weather threat means that areas could be impacted multiple times, which makes it essential to stay weather aware not just for one day, but for the entire week and potentially beyond. Flash flooding is also a major concern as slow-moving storms could produce extremely heavy rainfall rates that can quickly overwhelm drainage systems and create life-threatening flood situations. What's particularly challenging about this setup is that different parts of the country are experiencing completely different types of weather hazards simultaneously. While the Southwest continues to experience record heat, with temperatures in the Rio Grande Valley soaring above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, marking the first triple-digit readings in the U.S. for 2026, other areas are still dealing with winter weather, including snow and ice from recent storm systems. This extreme temperature contrast is exactly what meteorologists look for when assessing the potential for explosive severe weather development. The sharper the temperature gradient between warm and cold air masses, the more energy is available to fuel intense thunderstorm development. Current temperature differences across the country are among the most extreme we've seen this year, which is why forecasters are so concerned about this week's severe weather potential. The economic implications of widespread severe weather are also significant. Last year's tornado season caused billions of dollars in damage across the central United States, and this year's pattern suggests we could be looking at similar or potentially greater economic impacts. Insurance companies, emergency management agencies, and businesses across the threat area are all closely monitoring these forecasts and preparing for what could be a very active and costly severe weather season. Agricultural impacts are also a major concern, as this is a critical time of year for spring planting across much of the Corn Belt and Great Plains. Severe weather outbreaks that produce large hail, damaging winds, and flooding can cause significant damage to newly planted crops and delay planting operations for weeks or even months in some cases. As we head into the most active part of this severe weather episode, it's crucial that everyone in the threat area takes these forecasts seriously and makes appropriate preparations. This is not a time for complacency, as the atmospheric setup favors the development of significant and potentially long-track tornadoes that could cause major damage to populated areas. Make sure your severe weather plans are up to date, practice tornado drills with your family, and stay tuned to local weather forecasts and warnings throughout the week. This could be the beginning of one of the most active and dangerous severe weather periods we've seen in recent memory, and being prepared could quite literally be a matter of life and death. As always, thank you for watching today's forecast. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because we'll be providing frequent updates as this historic severe weather pattern continues to unfold. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you in the next one.